במעמד העולם ותחסידי של פרבrengen.
It's the Alter Rebbe's second night of Dalfin Teves. Firstly, I want to thank Reb David. You know, I've been to many, many places. Never have I been hosted with such Hoshit Achnosus Orchim and kindness. I once was on a plane. I met the wife of a very prominent Rav, of a Babich Rav, who's in the 70s, and we were talking about her family background, and she says, you know, they asked my husband to come to speak here and there. In general, he doesn't like to do it. And when he does it, when he gets off the plane, they don't offer him food, a little nap. I felt bad for her. Reb David, I'm saying this not to boast his ego, just push it to know how to treat a guest, any guest. So grace Yashikoyach Reb David.
Thank you.
Where's the L'chaim, David?
Right over here.
No, you saw not this.
Okay. This.
No, that's what I'm finding. L'chaim.
Amen.
Singen first of the Alter Rebbe. Please sing together. This isn't a show. It's a Farbrengen. I told David, if you want a lecture, it's a whole different mahalach. If you want a seminar, it's another mahalach. A Farbrengen is we sit together, we sing together, we laugh together, we cry together, we open up our hearts. And you need patience. If you don't have patience, if you have spilkes, you ain't going to get the gist of the Farbrengen. And that's your decision. So let's begin with the Chassidish Niggin of the Alter Rebbe. Kol Deidi? He knows how to play Kol Deidi? Kol Deidi. David told me today that Rabbi Greenblatt, Olav Shalom, and the Farbrengen is the Schus Nishmasai. The other side, I believe, was yesterday. Was very big on Chazering Maimorim, Baal Peh. This is what David told me today. I didn't know that. Bashgacha Pratis last week, talking about the arrangements. So I said I think it would be appropriate, if time allots, to say a shtickle maimer, sai because it's Chavdalah Teves, sai because your Shver, Rabbi Glindas, was the mashpia here, and therefore, and then he told me this today. So I'm going to Chazer, Bekitzer, because I know you have a lot of patience to hear of my Chassidus now. That's what you're up to after a good day of snow. And before that, I asked David if we could sing the niggin as a prelude to the Maimer, the Rostov niggin, the niggin that was sung by the Rebbe. And before that, let me tell you that I don't see the battle here, but the Rebbe Gerari, those that were around in the late 1950s, there was a whole vikuach, a whole debate about which niggin we should sing at which time, until the Rebbe made a vad hamanagnim, a board of of singers, of bali menagnim. Some were Reb Heshkid Gansberg. The three were the four were Reb Heshkid Gansberg, Reb Yoel Khan, Reb Shamshon Charatonov, and Reb Shmuel Zalmanov. And they were the ones who decided and regulated which nigunim should be sung when. There's a lot more to say about this, but it's not tonight's theme. There is actually a tape that was released online, which is very interesting to hear how they're at a meeting, I think it's 1960, and they're talking about which nigunim, and they're going back and forth. It's not so clear, but you get the gist of how these Hasidim were debating with each other and singing, and one said to the other, "Lo meherden, let me hear you sing it." And that's how they came and formalized the nigunim. So in Chabad today, when a chassid says a maimer, they sing a certain niggin. They don't sing the niggin that was sung before the Rebbe said a maimer. Reb David said I should share things I heard from various mashpiyim. So I heard from Reb Mendel Futefas, who happened to be an uncle, a great uncle of ours. And I asked Reb Mendel about which niggin is appropriate to sing today before a maimer. And Reb Mendel told me, "Memeg zingen der Rostov niggin, memeg zingen der maimer niggin, was mit gesungen beim Breben." It's okay if you sing that niggin. So I'm going on his shoulders. I'm going to sing together now the maimer niggin, and then I'll say a shtickle maimer, okay? No, where's the... No? Ay, la, la, nivru be'elam. 50 gates of unity were created. The Gemara says, Memtes, 49 gates were given, and the Shad Hanun, and the 50th gate, was not given. Asks the Rebbe Rashab in his Maimer that he said in Tafresh Nun Gimel, 1893, in conjunction with the first time that he told the Frierdiker Rebbe about Chai Elul, print in the back of Sefer HaSichos, and today in the Maimorim of Tafresh Nun Gimel, he asked the question, what is the purpose of knowing that there's 50 gates if we only have access to 49? So why tell us that there's a 50th gate? And to explain this, he introduces the concept that the word nivriu doesn't only mean to create, but it also means to reveal, his galus. He bases it on the Gemara in Chulin, regarding the laws of Teves, with a puncture in the animal. So the Gemara says we're not concerned that it's a puncture to the point where it's revealed. For that we see that the word Bodo in Hivri also means revelation, not only creation. And he says that the way to reveal the 50 gates is through the avodah of Torah, through the service of studying Torah. And he explains that in learning Torah, I'm just giving you a synopsis of the Maimon. And he explains that there's two levels of Torah, Talum, Motor, Rain, and Do, which is equivalent to the concept of Isarusa de Leil and Isarusa de Talta, the arousal from above and below, which means, is the inspiration coming from within you, or is the inspiration coming from above, imposed on you? And the Rebbe continues in the Maimer that this is also why we say Choyle, the word sick, Ches Vov Lamed Hei, its numerical equivalent, its gematria is 49. And he asks, if someone is immersed in the Avodah of Torah, why is he a Choyle? And he says, this is the Lashon from Rebbe Rashab in the Maimer, Dai B'Remezeh. He doesn't really explain it at this point, but says it's adequate enough. The fact that the gematria of the word is choyle, it shows something is lacking in your avodas haTorah. He goes on to explain that this is the difference between the bittul hayesh and the bittul b'mitzias, which is the concept also of riyah and shmiyah. When seeing something, the clarity of seeing versus the knowledge coming from hearing something. That the bittul hayesh, the obliteration of self, is only compared, it is to shmiyah. There isn't clarity like riyah. Riyah leads to what we call bittul b'mitzius, the non-existence of existence. And he goes on to say more in Avodas Hashem, this means that there can be a time when a person falls, spiritually falls. And the Gemara says in Saita that the falling consists of various different kinds of chaylas. One chaylas, one illness is compared to you get a cold, patsina. Another type of illness, chas v'sholem, it's much worse. And finally, there's a chaylas which causes complete apathy. And the Rebbe's masber that this is all caused by what we call indulgences, Teves heter. It's kosher, it's permissible, it's mutter, but it's unnecessary. So the fact that you make it necessary according to your standards and thoughts, that's a taiva, that's an indulgence. And what that causes is various kinds of maladies, spiritual maladies, the equivalent of a cold and worse. Then he goes on to say that this is all when it's what's called a yerida, a gradual descent, where a person gradually descends from their level of kedusha tara to, unfortunately, a fall, a spiritual fall. But then there is Rahman Litzlan, what he calls a nefila, me'igra rama lebira mikta, from a high mountain to a deep valley. It's a very deep fall, uncontrollable. What is that in spiritual terms? It's when a person not only indulges in dvarim amutorim, but he indulges Rahman Litzlan hoyelesi in dvarim asurim, forbidden matter. And the Rebbe goes into details there. So the question is, all this comes from a lack of what he calls avodah in Torah the right way, with the bittul, with complete humility and subservience to the Eibishter. So what's the solution? He's identified very well the problem. Says the Rebbe, it's a very unique lashon in this Maimer, it might be only in this Maimer, where he says, he calls for tshuva. Well, tshuva we know about. But the way that Rebbe writes in this Maimer, that Rashab writes in the Maimer is, the tshuva is, his lashon is, hazaza klolis. In today's language, it would be a paradigm shift. A complete change, a mindset change. Only after having hazaza klolis and saying, I don't want to be this way anymore, without the details. I must vacate. I must make a change. Once you have that paradigm shift at hazaza klolis, that Rashab says l'chol hapochos once a year. When you have that once a year, then you can go on to Torah mitzvahs. And each one impacts you b'derech premium, b'derech makiv, as explained the Chassidus, and the Alter Rebbe brings it in time. And he concludes the Maimer that the fact that it says Shivim Panim B'Torah, and that's Shivim B'Gemat Yisoid, Gemat Shivim, 70, that's what the site is at Torah. But Galia the Torah is 49. And he says another tremendous thing at the end of the Maimer, that a feeling that tzaddikim gedolim, the lashon from Rebbe Rashab, even to great tzaddikim, what was revealed to them was only the 49 gates. But with avodah in Torah, with bittul, true bittul, we then use the 49 gates in a proper way, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the shara nun. No, that was a shtickle Maimer. A bissel Wasser, yeah. Five.
because my shver would always ask the Bachrim to chazer my mom about Peh. And many young light came over to me and tell me that what made them a mensch is when both gave them the self-confidence that they could learn the Maimar Baal Peh. And both, when he used to go to the mikveh, him and the Bachrim with him would take 45 minutes to walk. And I asked him, what did they do during that time? They chazer the Maimar Baal Peh. So please, Rabbi Dalfin, continue Farbrengen with the Yoel.
So, it's Chavdalet Teves, so I want to talk a little about Chavdalet Teves with a few mices, and I have a few Nakudas. Farbrengen is not a time to zählen jeder Wort. You know what that means? Tomorrow morning you're going to say, he said this, I liked it, I didn't like it. That's not a Farbrengen, that's a drosha. You want a drosha? Not me. There's a free exchange of ideas and words and concepts. And a Farbrengen needs participation, so please participate. So, the Alter Rebbe began being a chassid. I was spoken 4 places. Koyach to Rabbi Avram for bringing me to the seminary and to the other moistes. You want to have wonderful moistes. The Alter Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe writes in the Sicha, it was called the Litvak, but I found in one Sicha, in the Naya Bichlach that came out, that the Frierdiker Rebbe says, he was like a misnagit. He walked across the street kind of when the simple people, the Amaratzim, were walking. Can you imagine? Think of the Alter Rebbe that way? I can't. As I state, look it up in the Sikha. Anyway, how does he become a chassid? How does he become a chassid? So we know the story. The Alter Rebbe went to Mezrich instead of Vilna. And when he was there, he says, I came here to learn how to daven. What does it mean, how to daven? Alter Rebbe knew the Peter Shatzvil is better than anyone else before he became a chassid. He means, how do I connect with the Eibishter through davening? And that's a very difficult thing. Most difficult thing is to attach through tefillah. It's a neshama arbit. It's work of the soul. Anyway, he goes there and he sees they're davening to 12 and 1 and 2. Alter Rebbe says, I came here to learn how to daven, but not to spend half a day davening. Alter Rebbe had a shiurim, it was a shaloyid, a makubal. Alter Rebbe was full of learning. I'm going to give away, I'm going to give away all my time, half of my day, davening, no way. And he leaves. Parenthetically, but I'm telling you now, Reb Yoel wants Farbrengen with us all night, Yutes Kislev in Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn, the yeshiva, on this story, all night. And I'm giving you over the Kamsis. Reb Yoel started the Farbrengen with us 8 o'clock, Yutes Kislev night, and he walked out 7 in the morning. And I'm not being magazim, I'm not exaggerating. And Reb Yoel was masber this story, that the Alter Rebbe came back for his scarf, and then he heard the Maggid talking an Inyan about the kashrus of a ray, of a lung, and he saw his goinus in Nigla. He said, Oy bazoi, if so, I'm going to stay. And Yoel asked the Farbrengen, like, come on, that's what got the Alter Rebbe to stay. You know, when you hear a story, you got to analyze the story. And Yoel was masber that night, and I share it with you. The shawl represents, the scarf represents Geshem, Gashmias. The Alter Rebbe went to get his scarf means he came to understand that elikus, that godliness, is found most in Geshem, in the material. And that was a revolutionary idea for the Alter Rebbe, because you can learn Shas, and Poskin, and Shulchan Aruch, and Musar. As a felt Chassidus, if you're missing the study of Chassidus, you don't have this Nakuda. You can't relate to this Nakuda. In other words, Chassidus, the Alter Rebbe, explains to us, especially in Tanya, explains to us the Meilech Geshem, the Rebbe Bell spoke about. I heard the Nefesh HaShvela, and the Rebbe has the Sikh on it, of course. The Meilech Geshem. And again, here you have to ask yourself, what do you mean the Meilech Geshem? The Alter Rebbe in Perek Chav Gimel and Tanya says, in a negative way, that we will get used to Gashmis, like an old car versus a new car. You know, it's old, it goes. A new car, it's new, it's very nice, but you got to learn the car. The Gashmis is old, it's with us from our youth, from our birth. And we become so accustomed to it. I told, I think the Bachar, I don't remember, Bachar, the girls, I spoke somewhere today, a mashal I heard from a Meilech Shibal, another mashpia of ours in Morristown. You invite people to your table. One of the people hasn't eaten in a long time. He comes from poverty. The other person comes from a wealthy home, but he doesn't happen to have a meal now. We have a place now in Borough Park. It's what you call a soup kitchen, but it's so far from a soup kitchen. All the Shenster, the Salter, Shanta, Borough Park come in to take Pasha to eat. They're hungry. They cop a mincha at a minion factory and they go in. So someone coming from a Gvidish shtub, a wealthy home, and Reb David, the host, gives each one a plate of food. When they start eating, who eats with more gluttony? As we say in good old Yiddish, who is fressing? They're fressed. No? The poor person, right? He hasn't eaten in a long time. The person who normally has food and now he needs some food and he's eating some food, he sits as a proper with etiquette and he eats. Volkman gemeint, you would think that who is more caught by the food? Who is more a slave to the food? The poor person, not the wealthier person. So that Meilech told us just the opposite. It's the gvir. What's the proof? Just try pull away the plates from each of the people. Who's going to go more bonkers? Who's going to become more upset and more angry? The poor person or the wealthy person? The wealthy person. Why? Because by the poor person, mit the essen, he and the food are not one. There is who he is, poor person. A person who comes from poverty, slave mentality. He didn't eat, frester. But is he the food? No. The gvir, his comforts, his food, and he are one. And when the next weg sein teller, and when you take away his plate, you've touched him. And you touch him, he's very upset and angry. Gashmias is such a luring commodity. It captures you. You know, to know how to deal with an enemy, you need to know your enemy. Yet the Alter Rebbe says in the Geras HaShvela that it's the Gashmias that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wishes to be the seat of what we call divinity, Elikus. I don't know how Rabbi Bell would translate this, but I always ask, give me a one-line definition of what Chassidus is. You got one line. So I found it once in Emmanuel Shochat's one of his books, and I loved it. And this is it. The study of divinity. In Hebrew, Elikus. Chassidus is Elikus. You're dealing with divinity, divine. The Alter Rebbe says, the ultimate of Gashmius is Elikus, but you have to use it right. All the Ruchni is very important as a preparation, etc., but it's all about the Geshem. So when the Alter Rebbe went back to get his scarf, Rabbi Yoel explained, the scarf is symbolic of Geshem, of Gashmias. And the Alter Rebbe came to understand my entire learning, Shalom and Zoyar and Gemara and Shulchan Aruch and everything. It's a gewaldik, but it's not Elikus as Elikus is through the Geshem. Of course it's Elikus. Torah is Torah. It reminds me, you know, there's a publication called Hakriya V'Akdusha that the Friedrich Rebbe gave out in 1940, 41, and 45. And tell you a little history, because I don't think the Olam knows this. The editor of Hakriya V'Akdusha was an uncle of Reb Yudel Keller, Reb Yudel Keller of Crown Heights, whose father was a shtickle secretary of the Rebbe, our Rebbe, in the 1940s. So he had an uncle who lived at the time, I think, in New Haven. And he was an editor, actually, of a paper that came out here in Canada. I think it was called the Kanadische Adler. He, I believe, was the editor of that. So the Friedrich Rebbe, when he came, the Friedrich Rebbe found out somehow, and he called him to come to him. And he told him he wants him to be the editor of Hakriya V'Akdusha, but he doesn't want anyone to know, etc. I heard this from Talmidim, labeled Posner of Sholem, Talmidim who were there in 770 and 1940s, 42, 43, 44. So he would come, and they saw a person they never saw before walking in to 770 and walking up to the Friedrich Rebbe's apartment. 1 week, a second week, a third week. No one knows who he is. So a few Bachirim, you know, Bachirim, they said, they go over to say, Reb Yid, Shalom Aleichem Reb Yid, wer sind ihr, who are you? And he says, he just keeps on going back into the train to Manhattan to take from Port Authority, wherever, to take the train to the Haven. And they see they have to go with a heavy hand because he's not speaking. So they told him, we see you come here every week, and if you don't tell us who you are and what you're doing, we'll spill the beans. So he told them. In the first edition, take a look, in Hakriya V'Akdusha, I think it's November of 1940, my memory serves me well. First edition, he writes about what is Chassidus. I'm saying this because to what I said before. And he writes there, in Yiddish, shows in Yiddish, of course, he writes there, to understand what Chassidus is, he talks about Nigla. And he quotes the Gemara and the Mishnah, Shoshanaga Kasapora, and other Mishnahs. And the way he writes it, one can walk away thinking that it's not Chas v'Sholem Torah. What's really Torah? Chassidus. The Frierdiker Rebbe, and look in the next 2, 3, 4 editions in the letters, you'll see got letters from Rabbonim all over America. Ad kedei kach, that they came to Rabbi Yasher Ber Soloveitchik, Rabbi Soloveitchik, who had a great mind, tongue, a pen, and they wanted him to write a letter, a protest against this article. I have not found, I looked and searched, I have not found it, and I do not believe that it was written, but some do say it was written. Anyway, the Frierdiker Rebbe, I think in Chelik Hey or Vav, one of the Chalakim of Igros Kodesh, writes a letter to this editor, and he says, you have to write a retraction, because the way you wrote it, you meant well, but he was new to Chassidus, and you don't explain the Meilech Chassidus with putting down Nigla. And he wrote a retraction. So I'm saying this because Chas v'Sholem, when we talk about the Nefesh HaShvela, the Meilech Gashmias, it's not at all Chas v'Chalila, Chas v'Sholem, to belittle Nigla, the Torah, etc. Rabbi Yoel, in explaining this story, added another caveat. It doesn't say in the Maaseh that the Alter Rebbe kind of got enamored to the point where he stayed in Mezritch for 3 years to learn more Nigla. It doesn't say that. What triggered him and chapped him was the Nigla discussion of the Maggid. But what did he do for 3 years? He immersed himself in Avodas HaChassidus, in Avodas HaTfilah, and he became a chassid. That's how the Alter Rebbe became a chassid according to the Frierdiker Rebbe. Chaim. Where's the Zirkin to help sing the Better Messiah's Niggin? We'll sing a niggin now from Chassidim from Krabetchuk, a geschmack and niggin called the Better Messiah's Niggin. Chaim Avram, Atzlochet Kol HaYonim. Reb David L'chaim, Shoma F'nai Shver Z'hom Naliyah.
Amen. L'chaim. Rabbi Mendel, L'chaim.
L'chaim. mentioned before that our great uncle was the Mendel Futterfass. I want to tell you a story that I don't believe the Olam knows. And the punchline and the message is very, very relevant. The Mendel's mother's name was Mariasha Badana Futterfass. She was married to Reb Chaim Futterfass. And, I'm sorry, she was married to Menachem Mendel Futterfass, because Mendel Futterfass' name was Menachem Mendel ben Menachem Mendel, because his father died in Nisan while she was pregnant, and Mendel was born 5 months later or so. Anyway, so the mother had 4 children. 2 boys, 2 girls. The oldest was Hanoch Hendel Futterfass, who became later Hanoch Hendel Lieberman, the Hasidic artist. He was born on Yudches Teves. I'm sorry, he passed away on Yudches Teves Tofrei Samach. And then there was Golda, who became later Golda Shem Tov. Actually, before that was Bracha Serebransky, that's my wife's Baba, her grandmother. Reb Zalman Serebransky's wife, and then there was Golda Shem Tov, married to Reb Tzion Shem Tov, Ben Shem Tov, and the youngest was Mendel Futterfass, Reb Mendel Futterfass. Hanoch Hendel, Reb Hendel Lieberman, those that remember him, or knew him, or saw him, he was more of a Balabatish Chosid. In his youth, he wore a clean shirt, pressed with a jacket. He was tidy. He was put together, as they say. Mendel was a bacher in Kharkov, in Nevel, Kremenchuk, in various Lubavitcher yeshivas in the underground during the 20s. And those that knew him, which I believe many of you knew him, he wasn't as tidy. Not at all, Avram says. That's right. There's a picture online of the Mendel sleeping on a bench. You know, you see him sleeping on a bench. I think it's a 770 or Kfar Chabad. You know, the clothing gets creased. It makes no difference. So listen to this line that his mother, Yasha, said to Mendel, and we'll talk a little bit about the lesson. She says, Mendel, du meinst, du bist der große Chosid. You think you're the big Chosid. Mendel Futterfass, Kharkov, Rashab, Friedeker Rebbe, we're talking about in those days. Lubavitch, you're the real McCoy. And your brother Hendel, even though he learned in Lubavitch, Mendel Futterfass did not learn Lubavitch. He did have Yechidus with the Rebbe when he was 9 years old, which he told me about, and maybe I'll tell you later. But Hanoch Hendel went to Odessa to learn art. And you know, when you go to Odessa, you don't come out as a Lubavitcher Tumim. It's hard. There's, you know, it's difficult. The challenges, etc., etc. So she says to Mendel, says, Mendel, du meinst, that du bist der emes Chosid. You think you're the real Chosid. Aber dein Bruder Hendel, nah, is nicht der richtige Chosid. He's not the real Chosid. So she tells him, you know what the difference between you and him is? Tragt gepresste Hosen. He wears pressed pants und liegt, and he's immersed in the pants being exactly on the crease and exactly beautiful. That's his taiva. Und du, Mendel, trotz geknetsche Häusen, you're wearing creased pants, und du liegst in demselbe taiva, but not as pressed pants, but creased pants. So you aren't any better than your brother. When I heard this line, I heard it from the Rebbe Futafas, the Mendel's son. He told me this. This is such an eye-opener. It's such an insight. In humanity, in character, and also, what does it mean to be a chassid? You think of a chassid, but someone who is quieter and you know, and more put together. Is that we call him? What do we call him in Chabad? Sometimes in the yeshiva, the Bachar here, a balabessel. You know what a balabessel is? Huh? A balabas, a layman who works and eats and sleeps, and tomorrow works and eats and sleeps, and 3 days works, eats and sleeps. But the chassid is, he drinks a lot of mashke, he farbrengs all night. My friends, you can drink mashke, you can farbreng all night, and you can learn a lot of chassidus, and you have the same taiva. It's called taiva of ruchnius. Who says that taiva gashmius is worse than taiva ruchnius? That's what Maryasha Badana was telling her Mendel, her son. It's the zelva taiva. It's the same taiva. Just this is the choice here and this is the choice there. The Alter Rebbe, tonight's the Alter Rebbe's yortzeit. Rebbe Rashab says, when you sit by Chassidus Farbrengen, you learn a shtickle Chassidus of the Alter Rebbe, etc. You're bringing a pidyon nefesh to the Alter Rebbe. You know what that means? Every one of us here has a need. A shidduch, health, parnosa, hatzlacha. Everyone. Tonight, tomorrow, the 24 hours, says the Rebbe from Satan, you bring a pidyon nefesh to the Alter Rebbe by Farbrengen on his day, which we're doing now, and learning his chassidus. So when you learn chassidus, chassidus is not just a limud. It begins with a limud, but it's objective. Its modus operandi is to be more getlich, more godly, not just more spiritual. There are plenty of spiritual people. More godly. What does it mean to be more godly? More godly means that whatever the Eibishter Kadosh Baruch Hu wants of you, you're right there. The Alter Rebbe and Meilech Meilech, which I really hope you walk away with one thing from the Farbrengen, is to either learn by heart, the Meilech Meilech, the first 12 lines or the concepts, and to think them every day before you daven. Why do I say that? Because my mashpia, Rav Avrom Mayor Drizzen, told me that in Lubavitch, the Bachar would think chassidus before davening. They had 2 tracks. One was they thought over something, the same thing every day for months and years. And not to get bored, they also thought a second track, a new inyan, a new idea, a new mimer. The Alter Rebbe, Meilech Meilech, I don't want to go into all the pratim. He says, Hashem leaves the upper and the lower worlds, and he comes to the person, and therefore, Kabbalah soil, right? Then he says, V'hine Hashem nitzav love, and the Rebbe makes one of the 12 psukim, V'hine Hashem nitzav Hashem standing upon you. And how does that section end on this next page? So I ask you a question. It's repetitious. He just said, etc., etc. I said, it's sign of Kabbalah soil, like a servant to a master. Then he adds, V'hine Hashem nitzav love. God stands upon you, and therefore, You have to stand before the Eibers to come before the Meilech. It seems to be repetitious. So I was thinking about this, and what came to me, and I asked him Shalom Charatonah this Shabbos in 770. He said he thinks that's the right shot, and that is the first time the Alter Rebbe was talking about Kabbalah soil, accepting the yoke of Hashem, doing what Hashem wants. V'hine Hashem Nitzav Olav is not Kabbalah soil, it's Yira, awe. It's Yira. Yira and Kabbalah soil are two different worlds. I'm going to allow you, Mashpiyim, to explain that to you at length. But the Kitzur, Kabbalah soil, and by the way, Kabbalah soil, see, we always learned in yeshiva, so da narische Kabbalah soil, there's foolish Kabbalah soil, and so da klugig Kabbalah soil. Chabad is klugig Kabbalah soil. Chabad's Kabbalah soil is not foolishness. It's deep. It's very deep. I understand. I feel. The person, and nevertheless, you commit beyond feeling and intellect. That's called healthy Kabbalah soil. Reiche Kabbalah soil. Foolish Kabbalah soil, yeah, you shake your head like a pig, like a goat. Yeah. Okay. It's also important. It's also important, but you don't need Chabad for that. Anyway, it's a different topic. No lectures tonight. Farbrengen. So, Yira is a different thing. Fear, awe, reverence. It's a different tnuah. The Alter Rebbe in Tanya opens up for us, Pashut, a gateway to healthy living. And I say this because I heard this with Rabbi Yoel. I mean, everyone will say, well, I know it in Tanya. Thank you very much. You've heard of the Sefer Noam Elimelech. You've heard of the Sefer Shem Shmuel, the Safetshover. Moira Naim from the Chernobler. Tell me, these Svarim, these Chassidus books, how are they structured? They're structured on the Parsha, primarily. As far as I know, there are only two Svarim that are not structured, Chassidus Svarim on the Parsha. One is Sur Marav Asei Teif, and there's a Ziditshoy Tzaddik, but it's very Kabbalistic, very Kabbalic. And the only other Sefer is Sefer Tanya. The Tanya is a systematic guide from self to world to Avodah and all the ideas that the Alter Rebbe discusses in Tanya. You won't find that any other Chassidus Sefer in such a structured way. Right? So the Sefer Tanya is a gold mine. Mamash a gold mine. I don't have my book here, but I wrote a book called Tanya on mental health. Everyone today is talking about mental health. Like we were machadish something here. My dear friends, mental health is as old as the creation of the world. And I took one or two ideas per chapter of the 53 Prakim to show a little insight how the Alter Rebbe would look at, let's say, schizophrenia. Or how the Alter Rebbe would look at guilt, loneliness, depression, melancholy, etc. The Sefer Tanya is not made just for Lubavitcher Chassidim. Sefer Tanya is made for every Yid. One of the things, I have a koilel in Bet Shemesh, in Eretz Yisrael, Ramat Bet Shemesh. I teach online. I tell Talmidim. Started in 2017-18. At that time I went back and forth 8 times. We set it up, and they also learned Nigla and Rambam. So, there was a Rav. If you look at the art scroll, Shas, you'll see a name there, Reb Chaim Malinowitz, Reb Chaim Zev Malinowitz. I knew Reb Chaim Zev Malinowitz, all of a show. He was a goy, open the cup. And he was the chief editor of the Shas. So he had a shul in Ramat Bet Shemesh. When we made the koilel, I thought, once a week would be nice to bring a rav, a speaker, kashrus, this, something to give the talmidim. Now, when I'm talking about talmidim, I'm talking about middle-aged to older adults. It wasn't a koilel like we're paying you the light. It was people who either were semi-retired, retired, or they worked American hours so they could learn in the morning. And we learned from 10 to 1. So I invited Reb Chaim Zev, and happened to be around Yutas Kislev. And he spoke about Yutas Kislev, and I said, Rabbi Melinowitz, and he's a Litvak. I'm happily surprised. So he says, let me tell you. But he didn't tell me that. He told me Gimel Tammuz, that same year. And what happened? First, in November, December, when he spoke for us, he also said, I want you to give a Tanya shir in my shul. I said, okay, not a problem, once a week. But I want you to prepare a course syllabus. I said, what? I said, that sounds like a Chabad House outreach type of program. He said, no. I want people to know what you're going to teach. So I did it. He paid on his own for a full-page ad in the local newspaper for this Tanya shir. I'm like, this is a Litvish Rav. So I'm asking myself, what is it about this man that he's so engaged in publicizing the Shir Tanya? So when it came Gimel Tammuz, and I saw that he was so ungewarnt to Lubavitch, to Chabad, to see this, I said, Rabbi Melinowitz, Gimel Tammuz that year was on Shabbos. I said, would it be possible to say a few words about the Rebbe, etc., Friday night between Kabbalah Shabbos and Mincha? He said, sure. Now, I was by myself there. My wife stayed back home. And it would have Hadlakas Neidos, have the Rav here, how do you do Hadlakas Neidos, a single man, Kabbalah Shabbos, whatever. So I asked Rabbi Melinowitz, as a Talmud Chacham, and he says to me, let me worry about those things. I'll take care of that. You come and speak. And he says, not only do I want you to speak at the regular minyan, but there's an early minyan, I want you to speak then too. So I said, but I can't light the candles, and there'll be Shabbos and Meganson and Mises. I can't epislen the Kenneth, you know what I mean? So I also know about this issue. So he says, I'll worry about it, not you. You have to speak twice for both minyanim about the Rebbe. And then it came time, and this was already Shabbos day between Mincha Ma'ariv. It worked the way it works. I don't know how it's here in Montreal, but by the Litvish over there in Eretz Yisrael, they go home for Shalosh Shudas. They don't have Shalosh Shudas in shul. So, as the last Kaddish is said, he gives a clap off the table, off the beam, he says, Rabbi Sai, no one is to leave shul. And the way I just said it, that's the way he said it. No smile, no one is to leave shul. And I want to tell you, Chevra, everyone listened. I saw it. 80 people were there for Mincha. Not one of the people opened the door to go out, because the Rav said, I think it's a lesson for us. We have our Rav here. I'm not joking. It's not a joke. A Rav says, Stas Torah, it's Haley. Anyway. And then he quotes the Gemara in Beya, he gives them Musar. If you walk out now, you're leaving the world of truth for Chayesho, for temporary life. And the Gemara says over there in Beya, a very sharp Lashon. I don't want to repeat it, a very sharp thing. And then he says to them, Rabbi Yisrael, we have someone here who's going to speak about the Lubavitch Rebbe. And then he says, why am I letting him speak? Why am I letting him speak? It's a Litvish shul. It's not our minhagim. Why am I letting him speak? And he says like this. I had 3 people who were madrech me. In Halacha, it was Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. In Gemara, it was Rabbi Abba Berman, who was a Shanghai Talmud from Mir, a great Talmud Chacham, a goy. And in Ashkofa, he said, he didn't say Chassidus. I think he said Ashkofa. It was Rabbi Yoel Khan. And I'm listening. What? He says, when I was in Muncie in the Koil from the Tziyonim, Rabbi Yoel would come Thursday nights and give a shir Tanya in Muncie. The simple wonders was eingesunt had a shir. But Rabbi Abba Berman didn't allow the Talmidim who wanted to learn Tanya with Rabbi Yoel to go at 8 o'clock because they have to stay at the yeshiva till 9:30. So Rabbi Yoel waited, and he started a shir at 9:30, 10, which went to 12 at night. And I attended that shir for 4 years. 4 years. He is my Rebbe. He is my teacher in Ashkofa. And I was waiting for the day, listen, when a student of Rabbi Yoel would approach me. This is what he said. And I would roll out the red carpet. It happens to be I was that student. And that's why Rabbi Dalfin is going to speak about Gimel Tammuz. Rabbi say, the world is waiting for us to share and teach Chassidus. Right here, in the Yeshiva Gedolah, the Yeshiva Gedolah, and all around, I promise you, if the right person, and maybe there is a shir, but we're talking about the inyan, the concept, to share with the Olam the jewels of Chassidus. Mevart, people are waiting today. Last week, there was a Shabbaton in Eretz Yisrael, outside in Ma'ale Adumim, of an organization that's called Mayone Yisrael. Streimlich. You know how many people attended? 1,500 men and women. Rabbi Sai, Chassidus is, as we say, a matbeya hamaleches. It's a current exchange that everyone's looking for. You just have to be ba'ayr that. The Alter Rebbe, the Bala Elul of Chavdalet Teves, is waiting for us. Our Rebbe is waiting for us to do these things more and more. People are thirsty, mamish thirsty to learn Avodat Chassidus. And today, with all the apps and the schmaps and the cell phones, they can learn and teaching Chassidus on the phone, on the computer, and in so many different ways. But that is not well done. You have to just want to do it. What did we learn last week in Parshas Shmois? Nirpim atem nirpim. Rebel, you remember the Rebbe's Farbrengen? I remember like it's ringing in my ears here. The Rebbe was screaming one Shabbos. Remember. Nirpim atem nirpim. You're lazy. Ihr fehlt sich. You could do it, but you're lazy. In 1986, my wife was coming back pregnant with my only and first son, my first child. In California, in Marin County, north of San Francisco, we were on Shlichus at the time. She's driving, a drunk driver being chased by the police at 90 miles an hour, goes into our brand new Toyota Corolla. She spins around twice from lane number 1 to lane number 4, takes off her belt, puts her sheitel on, and looks up. Am I still here? Yeah, I'm still here. The Rebbe was Farbrengen that night, Zion Cheshvan, look it up. I went to Rabbi Reichik, a very good friend of Rabbi Greenglass. I said, Rabbi Reichik, he was my Mishpi. I said, Rabbi Reichik, was meintus? You know, the Polish that they speak. Was meintus? What does this mean? What am I to learn from this? My wife's a good woman. We just got married. We're having a child. What does God want? You're allowed to ask. And Rabbi Isaac said to me, "Ich kann dir nicht antworten. I can't answer you. Frag the Rebbe. Ask the Rebbe." So I did. I wrote a letter, put in some tzedakah, sent it off. And I didn't really expect an answer. But one day in January, I look into my post box. There's a letter from the Rebbe. The letter should be well. The letter was to me, but addressing my wife's pregnancy and have a healthy delivery and all that. It was sent out late. Should have came much earlier. And the Rebbe writes, Nun Beis. This is something the Yoel doesn't know. He writes to me, P.S. Ha'hayro mehama'ura. The lesson from what you wrote to me about the car crash, the speed, he doesn't go into details, mehama'ura, because I wrote the Rebbe about the experience, what happened in the Ura. Goydel inyan hazrizus bechol inyonei toyev. He didn't say bechol inyonei toyev mitzvahs. How great is alacrity, zrizus, in all matters of goodness. And then he quoted the Rashi in Pashas Shpotim, not that you beat God forbid sick and God will heal you, but sickness won't come upon you. The God when you know tzedakah, ask it al right? The Rebbe says, alacrity, schnellkeit, no kratzing. What are you kratzing for? What are you pushing it off for? For morgen. Heint, hayem la say so. Hayem la say so. Today you have to do it, not tomorrow. I'll get to it. I'll think about it. Mendel once told me, this is in Los Angeles, we were bucking him. He was there for Shabbos. And he says, Du weißt, was ist the größte Klippe in America? You know what's the biggest Klippe in America? Mind your own business. I'm going to say something to David. He's going to say, mind your own business. Who are you to tell me? Mind your own business. Says Reb Mendel, das ist Klippe. He says, by uns in Rusland, by us in Russia, if someone answers mind your own business, you got a frask. You kick them out. What mind your own business? You're in an army? You're in the Chassidish army of Chabad Lubavitch? And you say, mind your own business? Shame on you. Shame on you. The whole idea of Chabad is Bruderschaft, as we wrote in the flyer, togetherness. Shlomo Schwartz told me in 1972, him, Kunin, Levitansky, and Stillman, 3 out of the 4 read in Ilum Emes. They had one car in the driveway of 741 Gailey Avenue, Westwood, Chabad House, the first Chabad House on campus. So I asked Shlomo, how did you guys manage? Everyone needs a car to go here, there. So he said, I'll tell you. The car was in the basement, in the garage. The keys never left the ignition. When Kunin needed, he started the ignition. Levitansky needed, he started the ignition, right? When I needed, Schwartz says, I started the ignition. And when Stillman needed, he started the ignition. It's not my car. It's our car, meaning Chabad's car, the Eberster's car, Chassidus' car. Rabbi Say, there's so much Gashmis. And Baruch Hashem is Gashmis. And there should be more Gashmis. But we have to use the Gashmis richtig. The Alter Rebbe, Tanya. If you learn Tanya, Liebe de Nafshe, you really take it seriously. And you think. It says in the Chassidish Sforim, a gewaltige Wort. Yaakov, who does he love? He loves Rachel and he hates Leah. You know the mistake in the same Shul from the Sochachav and another Sforim. What does it say? Leah is machshava and Rachel is dibur. We love to speak, and we hate to think. Chabad's all about thinking. They would say in Rusland, how do you know, right? You know how they called informers in Rusland? I heard this from Tzvi Tzatz Shalom. Schmeckers. What's the group of Schmeckers? Because these guys were smelling who was a frum Yidl in the Choral Shul in Moscow and in Leningrad with a Bardem Payas. Reb Zalman Serebransky was this close to being another victim like Cholim Marozov and Raskin. In 1938, he would have never came back. There was a Yidden shul dressed with a Lange Kapotte, a Lubavitcher, Nebuch. And he was Nebuch, an informer. And if Zalman was about to speak to them, and his friend said, Zalman, sag nicht kein Wort, shut your mouth. Schmeckers. They're there to smell who is a chassid and to rat on them to the KGB. So, the idea of togetherness, to break the klippa, to use Gashmi as the right way. And mind you, for the sake of the record, the Alter Rebbe wanted the Tsar to win, not Napoleon. His contemporaries wanted Napoleon. Why? Emancipation, freedom, Gashmias. It was the Alter Rebbe who said no. So you ask yourself a question, what do you mean the Alter Rebbe wanted we should live in dire poverty? Chas v'sholem. But the Alter Rebbe saw that if it's only Gashmias, it's going to lure you away and there'll be a breakdown. So L'chaim, the Eibusher help us. And first of all, everyone here, all of us together, say L'chaim for all the Yidden that need the refuah shleimas, the Gashmias, Yosef Nechama, and everyone else, Chanei ben Miriam, Yaakov Yitzchak ben Beila, etc. And those that need better parnasa, the Eibusher showered them with a saf parnasa, and with Yiddish Chassidish nachas for children, grandchildren, shidduchim. So today I spoke, Rabbi Avram invited me to the seminary. So the first task, Avram, I spoke a little about the Alter Rebbe. Then I saw some of the girls walking out. So I had to make a quick left, you know. I started speaking about shidduchim. They all were there and just listening and thinking. I told him a word. I'm going to say it now, even though maybe it's not for Chassidish Farbrengen, but the Alter Rebbe, but I'll leave it up to the Alter Rebbe. I'm not going to say who. There's a Chassid, a Russian Chassid in Crown Heights, with a Lange Weißer board and a real Chassidish Yid. He goes over to his grandson, who's a friend of some of us here, and he says, so-and-so, it's time for you to marry, you're looking for a shidduch. I want you to find, I'll say it nicely, a pretty woman. And the grandson looks at the Zayda and he says, Zayda, was weißt du wegen pretty women, okay? What do you know about pretty women? I thought you know how to raise check eggs and salad and frimme meises. And the Zayda said, you're right, my dear grandson. I don't know about pretty women. You know what I know? I know you. I know you, and I know Maslik eating cup. And you need a pretty woman. Everyone has to know themselves, you know? You have to know yourself. Don't fool yourself. Elichaim Karlbach and Shlomo Karlbach's brother, Farbrengen with us in Los Angeles, and one of my chaverim was smoking. So it's bad enough that you're smoking out of Farbrengen, and in those days I guess it was accepted. But he's making circles. You know how you make the circles with the smoke? And he's sitting there and making these circles, and Elichaim is Farbrengen And he's a chassid of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and platzt. He can't take it. And he screams out, Scheite! You fool! Das tust du bei a Farbrengen? Lubavitch Chassidim, and he said, the first thing I was taught after I came from Lakewood in 1944 was get rid of your Scheite. L'chaim, Rabbi Zirkin spielt noch ein Niggin. Chaim. Can spielen the Niggin from Gershom Mendel? I like that Niggin. Wie geht the Niggin? Who's Hirschel Raskin? Who cares? Play. You want to sing this and nothing? Whatever you want. So, I grew up. Avram is Lisan Lisan as a Deinkel from the Shleim Chayim.
Shleim is here. Shleim Lisan.
The tale Namaisa from the Shleim Chayim that I heard from my father. My father was a Talmud by the Shleim Chayim from 1950 to 58. Before he came to Reb Nissen and then he came to America. Before I forget, I must say a great hello to my two Mechotanim, Reb Shaya Denberg and Reb Yosef Wolanski. I don't know if they're here, but they are my Mechotanim, and we recognize you and we love you. Anyway, listen to this story. So, in those days, in the yeshiva, many Bochurim were not from the Lubavitcher backgrounds, like my father. He came from Vishnitzer background, Vishnitz Hasidim. The Vishnitzer Rebbe was in Bnei Brak. There was also the Senate Vishnitzer Rebbe, I think, was in Tel Aviv. The Heilige Belzer Rebbe was between Tel Aviv and Yerushalayim. Right? And Bochurim, who didn't come from the background of Lubavitch, wanted to go to a Tish. Now, the fact is that Reb Shlomo Chaim worked very hard, together with the other Mashpiyim, to instill in the Bochurim Chabad. So the Lubavitcher Yeshiva. So this was a constant discussion at the Farbrengens of Reb Shlomo Chaim. The Meilech of Chabad. Reb Shlomo Chaim said he came from Koidenov. His father was not a Lubavitcher Chassid. His father was a kohen of a Chassid. He was a great tzaddik. A Polish Chassidus Chassid Koidenov. He was known as a Baal Meifus, Koidenov Rebbe. So Reb Shlomo Chaim said that someone came to the Mashpia in Lubavitch, he didn't say if it was Reb Greiner, Reb Shilin, whoever it was, Ashbatz, Reb Michal der Alter, whoever it was, and said, Ich will gehen her in dem Koidenover Rebbe. I want to go to the Koidenover Rebbe. I hear he's a big tzaddik. I want to go. So the Mashpia said, I'll let you know in a few days. Now you know what that means, right? Basically, I don't want you to go. Comes back in another few days. Mashpia, it will gain some Koidenover. Push them off again. A third time, he doesn't push them off anymore. And he says, go, 10's game. But listen to this. He says, there's Dalfin game. It's a little sharp, okay, but it's a Farbrengen, so take it the right way. Werd nicht verloren, don't lose your head, okay? He says, there's Dalfin game. You're going to go to Koidenov. And you'll see that it is a Rebbe, he's a tzaddik. He's a Rebbe, of course he's a Rebbe, but it's Lubavitch. No. You'll see that for yourself. Then he says, you look a little, I'm sorry to tell you, it was a bris. It was just the punchline. It was a bris he wanted to go to. I'm sorry, but the Koidenov and the Kraven of Rebbe shul. So he says you can go to the bris. Aber erstens wirst du sehen, als ein Rebbe, aber, you know. Then you'll find out the bris is nicht kein bris, and then you'll find out that maybe he wasn't even a zachar. In English, it doesn't go. I would have to say it in Yiddish. But here's the point. We walk around with fantasies. Meretz Chaim, we convince ourselves, this is the Rebbe, that's the Rebbe. If you're not on the Messiah, Reb Yoel Sefer that he allowed to publish, Tarki Rabbi Seinu Nisienu, he chose the name. He didn't write the Sefer. He had a great writer in Eretz Yisrael, and he looked over it and he approved it, but he didn't write every line, every word. But the name he chose, what's the name? Darkei Rabbi Seinu Nisienu. We have a Messiah. We have a derech. You find out the Rebbe is nicht kein Rebbe, the priest is nicht kein priest, and he's not a zocher. In other words, you got it all wrong. You have it all wrong. The young people in the Bocherim, the future of our people, the meisters that Reb David and Reb Avram brought me to today, to look at the future. That's very important. That's the ikr. And we need to share with them our Messiah. That's why when Reb David invited me, I said, I want to Farbrengen. I want to give drushes. To talk about the Messiah from Lubavitch. Rabbi Greenglass was a Yid that lived with the Messiah. Rabbi Greenglass came from Alexander Sidim. My Zayda came from Alexander Sidim on my mother's side. He was a aristocratic boy. He played the fiddle. He wore a great kapota, right? He came from a Kvidish home. He was no slouch. He was no shlemiel. He makes a transition in his life. He changes completely. Comes a Lubavitcher Chassid. Opens up a whole world, a new world, the Messiah. We need to find out what is our Messiah. We need to live with that Messiah. What is our Messiah? a Chassidish Nigim, a Peirik Tanya, a Lakuti Sichas, a Miftzoyim. That's our Messiah. And when we go with the Messiah, you can't go wrong. You won't go wrong. If not today, tomorrow, it's going to come back in a positive way. There's no question about it. I've seen it, you've seen it over and over. But you got to stick to the tradition. Years ago, they came out with Lubavitch Light. Many years ago. And I said, Chabad Light, sorry. Thank you for the correction. I said, what is it, light mayonnaise? You got regular mayonnaise and light mayonnaise. There's one Chabad. You do a little more, you do a little less. The Rebbe told me when I came to Marin County in 1984, and I saw a flyer that my chaver, Barry Scheinman, Benjamin Scheinman to Chicago, put out. His face on a flyer, and on top it said, I am not Reform. I am not conservative. I am not Orthodox. I am Chabad. And then in smaller words, this is at the philosophy of Chabad, Avos Yisrael, etc., right? And I saw this, I said, this is a great way to introduce myself to the 19,000 Jews of Marin County, most, of course, hardly any from Jews. Great introduction. I printed up 500 beautiful postcards. I was going to do a mass mailing, but I have a boss, he's called the Lubavitch Rebbe. So I sent it in to him. As a duch, a few hours went by, Benjamin Klein calls me, did you send in a flyer to the Rebbe? I said, yes. He said, the Rebbe wrote 10 lines of an answer to your flyer. I said, what? And Bekitzer, the Rebbe wrote to me, what you're writing can be ma'orer old machlokes. And therefore, don't say that. Number two, by saying I am not Reform, I am not conservative, I'm not Orthodox, you're giving in and saying there are three categories, Reform or you're not. Of a Sepharan, it exists. That itself is already Chiluk Kedeus, Piluk, division. And the Rebbe said, if you need to talk, if you need to speak about this, do it in talking. Don't write it this way. I took the 5,000 cards, I had a garbage can, they went right into the garbage. The Avos Yisrael sensitivity the Rebbe shows us. It's the one Yid, there's only one Lubavitch. There's no light and colors. We always had some people that were more Hasidic, less Hasidic, etc., etc. But don't formalize Chabad into the real Chabadniks and the lightweight Chabadniks. The Rebbe never ever spoke that way, never ever thought of that, such a thing. What's the story that they just publicized in COL, or one of the members of Gem? Kum, aber kum, right? The chassid says, I'm dirty, I'm schmutzig. I remember, Rebbe Bel Gedenkst, the person who brought to the Rebbe the dollars during the week when the Rebbe gave the dollars, remember who it was? Sidney Hecht, Shalom Hecht, the youngest brother of the Hechts. You know how he came in? I saw this every Farbrengen. He came in with a sweater, with a gargle on a sweater, and he ran in. And he gave the Rebbe crispy new dollars. He had a connection with the bank over there on Coney Island Avenue. Kum, over kum. Come. Now, should you come without a hat and jacket, a kapot, if you're going to the Rebbe? Of course not. But don't let that, the Nekud Ikris of the connection to the Rebbe, to the Tzaddik, to Chabad, is the same for all of us. And I promise you, when our youth will hear this message and see it, they'll come out solid. You know, Hashem benched me with one boy and 6 girls. And at my table, we spoke about everything. And we dialogued. And guess what? We disagreed sometimes. Strong disagreements. But Baruch Hashem, every one of them is Lubavitcher, is frum, is connected. Does everyone have my ideas? Absolutely not, and I don't want them to. Now, the Rebbe paid the base. Teves. So what does he say that pay the base? The neshama that a person has is not up to the parents. The manifestation and development of the neshama, that's why there needs to be kiddush ima, etc. But the neshama itself, Hashem gives a person the neshama. We have to give hadracha, we teach. When you show your children and grandchildren and friends and colleagues that there's acceptance doesn't mean you go along for the ride and give in to every narishkeit. When my daughter came down Motzei Shabbos in jeans, she wants to go out. I said, you're not going out. It's Melava Malka, you're going out. You don't want to wear Shabbos dress? Okay, we'll compromise. Jeans? Motzei Shabbos? It's Melava Malka. So let's make a compromise. And it worked. You don't have to give in to everything. What do you stand for? We're parents. I always told my kids, I'm not your friend, I'm your father. I'm not your friend, I'm your father. I love you. And I want a dialogue, but I'm a father, I'm not your friend. We sometimes get very antsy and like, what is she going to say? What is he going to say? What's the agenda? What's going to be and all that? Sorgt sich nicht. Gam zu Yavor, right? Gimel Zayin Yud on the stecking, right? You're walking out with a stick. Gimel Zayin Yud. Gam zer zu Yavor. This will pass. Stand up for your principles. You're in Lubavitcher, Be'emes. We're in Lubavitcher. We're chassided. It's not a time to give up the Messiah. On the contrary. And the Rebbe teaches us. I'll tell you another story. The women over there are going on. Tafshin Memhei. First time I came back from Shlichus to the Rebbe for Yud Shvat, which, by the way, Yud Shvat night, those of us that were there know this. Those that weren't, hopefully can feel it, understand it. When the Rebbe came into Meilech, you couldn't hear a pin drop. He talked about Yira. Wow. It felt Yiridik. And I see here by my spirit of Yoel, and he greets me with a smile like he always did, sticks out his hand to say Shalom Aleichem to me. And after that, he becomes very serious and he says to me, "No," but without the smile. "No, I want to drop." Standing with 5,000 people in 770, Yud Shvat, waiting for the Rebbe to come down, and Rebbe Yoel was looking right at me. There's no room to move, and he says, "No." I say to Rebbe Yoel, What's going? What did I do? He says, "No, recht über links, right button over left." I had my left button over my right. Now, I want you to understand the story, because I don't believe many of you understand the story because you didn't know him. Rabbi Yoel, on one hand, wasn't someone who, he made a big issue of frumkeit. He never spoke about frumkeit to us in the Farbrengens. But he himself was a very frumer. I'll give you another example. I'll go back to this. When he came to Shir in Ocean Parkway, David, maybe you remember this. He would give a Tanya Shir Thursday nights. We were younger Bachurim, and the older Bachurim were the big Kananim, Tzvi Greenblatt, Shalom Chartonev, and all those Chevra were older Bachurim who understood well, and he gave deep shiurim, 2-hour shiurim in Tanya. When he would come in the winter like now, he would wear a sweater under his jacket. Rabbi Yoel to his last day did not put on a kapota during the week. You know that, right? So he took off his left, and then he took off his left sweater, and then he did his right, etc., like it says in Shulchan Aruch. And we were cracking up. And Yoel Khan is thinking about left and right, like, I thought he's supposed to be in the heavens with Ak and Kaidim Atzimtzum and Darkas and Spheres. His father, Father Khan, was the Yid of Shemayim. He was a Yid here, Noske Gorari, Reb Nosson Gorari, here from Reb Nosson Gorari, my Chaver Reb Yanki Winter, who's the son-in-law, told me that Reb Nosson Gorari said, "Was means the Yoel is given Mashahu. You think Yoel was something? He was. Fol is given Mashahu. His father was something special. Yoel noch Chassidus. I know Chassidus. Noske noch Chassidus. Very nice. We talk about Yireh Shamayim and Bruderschaft and Ava and Lubavitch. Fol had it. Anyway, so Rabbi Yoel tells me right over left. So that's why I never thought that Rabbi Yoel Khan is worried about my buttons on my jacket. He has nothing better to think about than my buttons. I think such a thing would be pasik for Rabbi Greenglass. It was a makubal. Some gig, right over left, left over right is good over chesed, like that, these are rights and stuff like that, right? The Rebbe, by the way, spoke about it by Farbrengen once. So Rabbi say, we can just sit in a ganze Nacht, and we can do that if you want. But it seems like Reb David wants to sing the Dalet Bavos. He has a Seder, so we have to concede to the wishes of the host, and then maybe continue. But the Nekudas Advarim is, the point is, that's Chav Dalet Teves. It's a Zman Miyuchad, it's a special time. We need to have Chassidus Farbrengen's, real Chassidus Farbrengen's, more and more. Not speeches. Farbrengens, unfortunately, have become speeches. No speeches. What did the Rebbe say, Damos? No speeches. No speeches. Farbrengen not speeches. Wir sitzen zusammen, wir sagt L'chaim, wir singen Tanigin, etc. L'chaim, L'chaim, the Eibusher help us. Shavoni Psuras Teves B'kol Inyonim, Mashiach, that's Zicher Kumen, and it's going to be now, and we will be part of it, the Mirza Hashem. L'chaim. All right, Moshe Chanovitz, how are you?
So much for coming.
Pleasure.
Yes.
When you say,
Tomorrow morning.
We're going to do the niggin of the Dalet Bavos.
By,
It's only appropriate for Dalet Teves. Chassidim say that when you sing the niggin of the Dalet Bavos, first of all, you're not allowed to sing it at any time you want, only on specific occasions. And when you sing the niggin of the Dalet Bavos, it's as if you get a part to the Alter Rebbe. So whenever anybody needs, I want to give a bracha in the schools of the niggin of the Dalet Bavos, in the schools of the Alter Rebbe, so I ran the Amphit. And if I could ask all the Kahanim and Arav Bel Beresham to give Birchas Kahanim, and we'll sing Dalet Bavos. And whoever needs a shidduch should get a shidduch. Whoever needs children in the right way should be children in the right way. Whoever has problems with parnasa should have parnasa darchava. Whoever has a problem with gesundheit should have refuah shleima. And the English should be the refuah for the oilam of Mashiach now.
Amen.
The Dalet Bavos.
Eine Tochter is a nephew.
Nephew.
A nephew.
Yoel hat nur Children.
Was?
Yoel hat die Kinder.
Ja, ja. That means Russell, that is his grandmother, is a sister.